We're going to do a real quick recap of some of the main concepts that we know so far. So geometry-wise, point translation, if I want to move anything up, I add to the y-coordinate. If I want to move it down, I subtract from the y-coordinate. So again, up, down is a y-coordinate change, okay? If I want to move to the left, I subtract from the x. If I want to move to the right, I add to the x-coordinate. So again, left, right is an x-coordinate change. If I want to find the midpoint, okay, a dot in between two other dots, what I do is I average the x's, add together, divide by 2, and then I do the same thing for the y coordinates so that I'm halfway between those two y values. So if I'm halfway between the x's and the y's, then I must be halfway between the two original dots. Now, what made conic sections a little bit easy so far is we kind of did everything in isolation. In other words, one day I gave you nothing but ellipses, the next day nothing but parabolas, so it was kind of easy to recognize the formulas and the orientation and whatnot. So what's going to be tricky is what happens if I throw any conic section at you at a time, okay? So what we're going to do is we're going to have to recognize the subtle differences between each one of those. First of all, if you only see one term that's squared, in other words, just x that's squared or just y that's squared, that has to be a parabola. Reason being is the parabola setup, the parabola equation is the only one where one letter is squared, the other one is not. Okay, that's part of our setup. Then the next thing is, if both letters are squared, we're going to take a look at the SIGN signs. If they are different, it has to be a hyperbola. Okay, remember, the difference between a hyperbola and ellipse is literally one sign change. One of the fraction is negative while the other is positive, whereas for an ellipse, they were both positive. So if one is negative, one is positive, if the signs are different, it must be a hyperbola. And then the last thing is, what happens if both letters are squared, so it's not a parabola, and both of the signs are the same. In other words, they're both positive or both negative. It can't be a hyperbola. Then we're going to look at the actual number. If the numbers in front of the x squared and y squared are the same, it has to be a circle. And if it's different, then it has to be an ellipse, which is basically a squashed circle, either short and fat or tall and skinny. And those number differences is the reason why.